But like we said, this week was Friday the 13th, and I've always had a tradition on Friday the 13th. It started way back when I was little, that every Friday the 13th we would go down to the video store. For us, it was Southern Video in East Tupelo.
Mm-hmm. Or Trooper Video in Moorville.
And Trooper Video in Moorville. And that was before we really started getting things like the Blockbusters and all that. And we would go down and rent. Now, kids, listen to this. We would rent VHS tapes.
How do you spell VHS? I don't know.
And if you don't know what that is, you should look that up. You should really experience what it's like to have to rewind a movie when you're done with it.
Yeah, be kind,
but
rewind.
We would go rent those movies, and I think I was talking to you before we started recording about I've seen my share, especially when I was little. When I'm like elementary school and we're renting these scary movies, we're talking about Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, Hellraiser.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All of these movies that a kid my age had no business watching.
Of course, especially, and you would only watch those right before you go to bed, too. So, you know, you got Nightmare on Elm Street. It's terrible.
Yeah,
idea.
You turn out all the lights and you watch those movies, and if you have an older brother or your dad is wanting to be mean to you, they'll sneak up behind you while you're watching, on the edge of your seat, shivering, terrified. They'll grab you and yell and scare you to death.
And then you would have a mystic.
That was always that was always my tradition growing up.
Yeah,
is watching scary movies on Friday the 13th. Now it's either watching movies or playing scary games or both. Now, my wife hates scary movies, so I usually end up watching one on Netflix or wait until everybody else has gone to bed, and then I'll watch one, or I'll play a scary game that week.
Right.
And like I said, I did that again this week. I've been playing through Until Dawn. That's been my go-to for the past couple of years. That game is awesome. If you just want a horror experience, and it feels like an old 80s horror movie, that's the perfect game. That's on PS4.
Right.
But one of the things that we got into, especially since we've had our son, and of course we're trying to be a family-friendly podcast too. I'm not going to suggest to our listeners, I mean, if you're listening, you know what you like to watch and what you'll let your kids watch. So we're not going to be talking about just the most gory or violent horror movies, but there are some movies that are family-friendly, and there's actually a whole long list of them that you can find on Netflix and Hulu and various streaming services. But we thought we would just talk about a couple tonight that are completely family friendly. And we were talking about before, most of those early movies, starting all the way back with Nosferatu,
right,
the silent films, the black and white films, today they are automatically family friendly because you didn't see really inappropriate things in any movies back then. So all of those movies, all of the original Universal monster movies are going to be perfect for the family or the kids because they're not going to see anything that's going to scar them for life.
Yeah, a lot of those things, you talked about the old Universal. I mean, you've got the 1941 Wolfman and Frankenstein from prior to that, the Invisible Man. A lot of those things, at the time, they stood out as just they were very frightening because they were the state of the art at the time. But now we look at them and it's
right.
A lot of those things are almost even campy.
Yeah, and it's so tame by today's standards as far as a monster movie or a scary movie.
Right.
But
yeah.
But there's a couple of movies that stand out that we usually watch. Now, one of them, Monster Squad, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Right.
Which I think you had said that you hadn't seen.
Yeah,
that
I'm not familiar
yet.
with that one, so you'll have to.
but you are familiar with Nightmare Before Christmas.
Well, vaguely. That's kind of one that I'm not a musical person. I
For shame.
I know. I'm just, to me, that's just, I just don't really, blame it on my experience. I'm just not a Les Mis kind of person. Well,
and Nightmare Before Christmas, it's kind of a Friday the 13th or Halloween or Christmas movie. Whenever you want to try to watch it.
Yeah, but even then, it's still. It's really.
It is still a musical.
And it's really campy, and it's. Let's put it this way: if Courtney watches it and she thinks it's cheesy, then it's not. It's pretty cheesy.
Yeah, it's not and that's one reason it's on the list of family-friendly, technically scary movies or whatever.
I don't know if I'd call it.
It's not scary.
I wouldn't call it scary.
I mean, it's Halloween themed.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Like, there's not a single really scary scene in it. There's nothing that's going to scar the kids or you're going to be able to send them to bed and they're going to have nightmares. There's nothing in this movie like that.
It's Disney,
Right.
It's Disney. So,
and it's Tim Burton, so it's a little creepy looking.
Yeah, because the setting half of it is like a Halloween town, so it's gonna have some of those elements in it. But it's certainly family friendly, and it kind of goes into the some of the traditions that we have surrounding some of our social scary times like Friday the 13th and Halloween. But it's fun for a lot of people. We never really got into it, even though.
Well, and it's an interesting plot. Now there's a lot of different styles of monsters in the movie,
right?
And like I said, that comes from the setting. I mean, it's Halloween time,
right?
But the idea of Jack Skellington basically kidnapping Santa Claus and taking over Christmas, it makes for an interesting setup to the plot.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he basically idolizes Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's sick. He's sick in the head.
Of course, yeah.
Is basically what's going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of feel like if they hadn't started singing 10 minutes into the movie, I probably would have been okay. But like I said, I'm not a musical person.
Well, and I'm that way. Now, I am a musical person.
Right.
And I don't like movies that it seems shoehorned into. Like, I agree with you that this movie, just looking at the aesthetic of it, knowing what the story is, it doesn't have to have songs in it. It would have been better without the songs.
Yeah, and no doubt. And, I say that I'm not a musical person, and at the same time, one of my favorite movies from the past year is The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, which I forgot to mention. That's one of the other things that we did this week. We got that on Blu-ray and watched it again.
Yeah, well, we haven't done that yet, but that's only because we've been state test prepping and sick. So, yeah, Wednesday I got home from work and I went to sleep. I woke up for about 30 minutes to eat, and I went back to bed. So that was...
the Nightmare Before Christmas, this seems odd to say this, but it was released way back in the 1900s. 1993.
Oh, that's amazing. 1900s.
And I want to say I saw it in the theaters in 2006, I guess it was.
Yeah.
They re-released it in 3D. That was when everything was starting to be 3D.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going to the theater to see it and putting on those glasses, and I just got a headache from it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like that was the horrible, it's technically digital 3D, but it's on that big theater screen, and nothing is really refined yet. And I remember just getting a headache from watching it through the glasses.
Oh, I'm sure.
But there are some better 3D experiences nowadays. Mm-hmm. One of the best that I've seen is Doctor Strange on PSVR in 3D.
Yeah, I bet that's great.
That way you put the headset on, you can watch the movie in 3D, and it's crystal clear, like it's a Blu-ray, so you don't get the fuzzy 3D that you get in the theater. It's just a better experience.
Right.
But excuse me, The Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, I enjoy the movie. We watch it. We've been watching it with Eli about every year, but we tend to watch this one more at Christmas than Halloween or Friday the 13th.
That's funny. That's good.
This is one of our Christmas movies.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Everybody else is watching Frosty, and you're watching Nightmare Before Christmas. That makes sense.
But it is funny when he idolizes Santa, and then he ends up just like kidnapping Santa and taking over Christmas. And it's funny. Everybody around him they can see like, okay, you got a problem. You need to you need to sort this out, Jack.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to see him just basically goes off the rails, and to the point of, like I said, kidnapping his idol, and he's like becoming Santa Claus. And
right.
All of his friends and his girlfriend and everybody can see like, okay, you need some help.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. What's Monster Squad? I don't know. You gotta tell me about it.
Monster Squad. I really hate that you haven't seen this.
I'm gonna have to.
This movie we were talking about before. We were talking about the Universal monsters, and this movie has all the Universal monsters in it. It's got Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon. All of those monsters are all in this movie.
Okay, so it's a movie. Okay.
Yeah. What this movie is it starts out that this group of teenagers, they're in like a monster club.
Okay.
And everybody like makes fun of them and all that because they're in a monster club. They have this tree house, and they go up in the tree house and they have their monster club meetings. And there's a guy that lives in their town that's named Van Helsing.
No.
And
okay.
He's an old German guy, and they're scared to death of him. And
can't blame them.
Well, let's see. It's I'm gonna say his name Van Helsing. I don't know if he is or not. Let's see. I was trying to look up some stuff about it to remind me. No, they have Van Helsing's diary.
Oh.
So it says Phoebe is one of the members of the Monster Club. That's his little sister.
Oh.
So she brings this diary that's supposed to be Van Helsing's diary. Excuse me.
Okay.
And this old German guy lives in their town, and they're all scared to death of him. They call him the scary German guy.
Oh, awesome.
And and he actually ends up helping them in the end. But what ends up happening is they come to realize that all of these monsters are real. So you have Dracula and Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Wolfman, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon. They're all getting together, and they're going to terrorize the town or whatever, and it's up to the Monster Squad to stop them.
Okay, so it sounds like Ernest Scared Stupid. Almost.
Well, it's not that stupid though. I'll just read this. Dracula is seeking to obtain the amulet, so that he can take control of the world, plunge it into darkness. Well, the Monster Squad is what they call their club. They end up recruiting actually this older, cooler guy into their club, and they all get together to try and basically banish the monsters. Well, what ends up happening at the end is they have to read from this diary, this Van Helsing's diary, to open a portal for all the monsters to get sucked into. Now, this is like a severe oversimplification of the movie. There's a lot of different funny things that happen throughout the movie.
Right.
And it sounds like such a stupid premise, but the movie itself is just so entertaining. And there's some things in there. There's maybe one little scene where you're like, you may not want your kids to watch. But like I said, by this time, this movie was in 1987. So I'm sure that in 2018, your kids have probably already seen worse than anything they're going to see in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So just the way today is, this movie is so tame by today's standards.
Oh, I'm sure.
I remember watching it in the 80s and thinking, oh, that, just something they'll say here or there or do. And I'm like, oh, that was more adult. But nowadays, I mean, it's tame by comparison.
Right.
But the big appeal to me for this movie was all the Universal monsters.
Oh yeah.
And these are some of the best versions of those Universal monsters that you'll see in any movie, and they're all in one movie.
That's cool. That sounds fun.
But if anybody's listening and if you've never seen the Monster Squad, look that up. And I'm telling you, it's you're missing out if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect Friday the 13th movie or Halloween movie that if you've got a group of kids over and you want to show it, or something more family friendly, it definitely fits that bill.
That's good. That's one thing that you and I kind of talked about right before we went online was some of the movies that we kind of grew up with that were at the time, they're quote unquote family friendly, and just kind of an idea of some of the scary things that I say scary, and I did the finger quotes when it said scary, and it's pointless because there's no camera, and I'm talking into a microphone that can't see me, so I did the air quotes for myself there.
Right.
So
at least you've explained yourself.
Yeah. So it's scary. We talked about we mentioned Ernest Scared Stupid a minute ago, and that was a funny one that I grew up with, and if you haven't had a chance to watch that one yet, it's good family friendly fun, and kind of just about anything that at this point that they had Jim Varney in it was hysterical, and he did a really good job of creating some of this entertainment here.
Is Ernest Scared Stupid? Is that the one where he's drinks yak's milk?
And it's the one where it was excuse me. It's the one where they had to use milk to kill the trolls.
Right.
And it was he mistook. It was a word thing where they I can't remember the puzzle that they had to use to solve it, but it was like.
But he thinks it says yak's milk.
No, he thinks it was miak.
Oh, miak.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, it was miak. And it was supposed
to instead of just milk.
Instead of milk, yeah. I was trying to.
Yeah. Now I remember.
Yeah, I was trying to think.
I don't know why I'm thinking yak's milk.
I don't know either. But yeah, it's Ernest P. Worrell, and it's apparently the Worrells are the people who have to save the world every time, right. And luckily this time they have Ernest that's supposed to be involved in that. And then there's kind of three movies that I grew up with and about the same time, and they were all kind of it's I don't know, it's a triumvirate of movies from 1986.
I'm noticing this 80s theme.
Yeah, of course. Well, but because that's when we grew up, man, and everything happened about 84 to 86. You got Transformers, you got He-Man, G.I. Joe, Real American Hero was about that time, give or take a couple years. Thundercats and Voltron and all that stuff was just awesome, and that's when everything hit its popularity. And these three movies came out about the same time, and I remember watching Critters when I was a kid, and it was made to be kind of suspenseful, and it was you have these little ugly little furball monsters that run around and kill people, and then you have these these guys in these awesome space suit, it's more like black leather. And I thought when I was a kid, I'm 5 or 6, and I thought that it was kind of cool looking. And they come in with these weird looking outfits, and they have these alien bounty hunters that come in, and it's a big ruckus, and it's a lot of fun. I remember.
It's the kind of movie that would not be greenlit these days.
Not at all, unless it was going to be kind of like a slapstick kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And that one was just great growing up. We watched that probably at least once a year growing up. There was a movie and also released in 1986, but it was kind of a remake of a 1953 science fiction movie called Invaders from Mars. And I saw this 80s version of it, and it terrified me. And it wasn't because of the bulk of the movie. It's essentially what happens. You have these invaders come in, and strangely enough, they're from Mars, and hence the
who would have thunk?
I know, right? And they come in, and essentially they take over the town by taking control of all of the people there. And it's a trope that we've seen 1,000 times before, but the only 2 people in the town that don't get taken over are this kid and his librarian or a science teacher or something. I think it's a librarian. But anyway, they end up calling in like the Marines, and he ends up finding the ship where the ship landed because he saw it and he didn't think anything about it. He thought it was just a falling star or something. And he went to school the next day, and he starts to see people are acting weird. So he ends up finding the base, and it ends up being that pennies or copper was the fuel used to fire their weapons. So he ends up being able to use their weapons. And then it was, thinking about it now, it's kind of cheesy, but if the end of the movie, I'm not going to give away the end, because it does have kind of a nice little twist, and I wasn't expecting it, and to be honest, that's why that film kind of traumatized me growing up. And the other movie, and I mentioned this one to you, and you said, I don't know if that's so much scary as it is awesome, and I kind of have to agree. But at the same, but by the same token, this is why I'll never look at a toaster the same way. This was Maximum Overdrive, and if you have not seen Maximum Overdrive, this is Emilio Estevez's best movie, bar none. And this is taking into account the Young Guns films. This is him going up against a semi-truck that has a mind of its own, that has the face of the Joker. And it was a lot of fun. And I loved the movie growing up. It wasn't so much scary as it was just it was a lot of suspense in the film, and it was just a lot of fun. What happens is that there's a meteor that passes over Earth or lands in a town. I can't remember which one, but all of the electronics come to life. And it's anything that has any form of electronics in it, and it's electronics, and it's things with motors, and it's essentially in any kind of machine is probably a better word for it than any kind of electronics. If they wanted to redo it now, it would essentially be Transformers, but but it was any kind of machine, and so it was like toasters and I can't remember what else it was, but
I guess it's hard for me to think of people alive that haven't seen this movie. I understand, I guess, a lot of the younger ones may not have seen it, but anybody that's even close to our age should have gone back and watched this.
Of course.
It's one of those, just like I said, awesome movies from that era.
Right.
And I think the best part about it is the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
AC/DC.
AC/DC, and what I didn't realize at the time and just recently found out was that this is based on a book by Stephen King.
Right. When I saw the movie, I had no idea.
No, not at all.
Not
at all. But at the same time, I was 7 and didn't care.
Right. We didn't read a lot of Stephen King.
No, and really didn't care. But those three just as kind of had a lasting effect on me, and at least 2 of the 3 were supposed to be scary.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of different types of scary movies that I've seen.
Yeah.
Probably one of the scariest would be The Exorcist, which there's some things in that movie that nobody should see, no matter how old you are.
Of course, yeah, no kidding.
It's one of those that'll stick with you, like it'll scare you for a little while. And nowadays, I'm still a little freaked out by dolls that are alive.
Yeah,
something like Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, it was Talkie Tina on the Twilight Zone.
Right.
All of that stuff just freaks me
like
out.
Like Chucky.
But yeah,
Chucky
and I remember when we were younger, my brother had a My Buddy doll.
Oh yeah,
and we watched Child's Play, and then like right after that, I went to his room and got his My Buddy doll, and I was like standing behind the wall and pushing it out, like acting like it was walking out into the hallway, and he like freaked out and ran screaming, and it was so funny.
So that's what's wrong with Ben. I'm just kidding.
But for whatever reason, a movie that still stands out to me is Troll.
Oh,
the very first Troll.
Yeah.
Now there's a sequel, or maybe multiple sequels. Troll 2 is actually one of the best riff tracks movies that you can see. They're making fun of the movie. But the first Troll, I don't remember much about the movie itself, but but I do remember waking up in the middle of the night when I was just a little kid and walking out. I walked out into the hallway and saw a troll at the end of the hall. And I mean, I know I was dreaming, but at the time, I didn't realize that. I don't know if I was sleepwalking or what, but...
And this is not to be confused with the 2016 American 3D computer-animated musical film based on the Troll dolls.
Yeah, not at all the same thing. You could go back and look up the movie Troll 2.
Mm-hmm.
Troll 2, like I said, is probably more popular because it's like so bad it's funny. Like it's supposed to be a scary movie, but it's so corny that people laugh at it.
Hey,
so,
just so you know, just another little, as an aside here, can you guess when Troll was released?
I haven't looked it up, and I have no clue offhand.
1986.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
Everything is from the mid-'80s. Of course, as awesome as the 80s were, I mean, it falls right in line with the fact that just about all of our movies, except for Nightmare Before Christmas, it's from 93. But the rest of them are all 80s stuff. And that was just a good time.
Did you know... I just kind of looked it up. The main character's name is Harry Potter.
In Troll?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
And
like I said, the only thing I remembered was my sleepwalking nightmare.
Yeah.
I didn't remember anything about the movie.
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
The main character is Harry Potter Jr., and then his dad is Harry Potter Sr., obviously. And then there's Ann Potter and a Wendy Ann Potter.
I wonder if it's all the same universe.
It's very possible. Let's see here. There's another little tidbit of information. Frank Welker did the voice of the troll, and the troll's name was Turok.
Wow. Small world.
Isn't it, though? Yeah, I thought this. Oh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus was in the film.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing her in.
Sonny Bono was
I
in
don't know
it.
if. Now we're going way back.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it was 1986, so.
But anyway, that was a movie that, like I said, that's the only thing I remembered about it was having that nightmare sleepwalking or whatever.
No, I'm sorry.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
I haven't had a nightmare or sleepwalked in years, so better not go back and watch it, I guess.
Yeah,
But
now the only thing I traditionally do at night is snore.
I don't have a problem with snoring, but
I mean, I don't either, but apparently my wife says that it's a problem, so.
Oh, yeah, I don't believe it. I know when I'm sick like this and stopped up, then, yeah, there's some snoring that goes on. But as a general rule, I don't snore very much. But
right.
And like I said, our family, we don't watch a lot of scary movies like I did when I was a kid. My wife's just not into them. And when Eli gets old enough, I'll probably introduce him to some of those 70s and 80s old classic scary movies.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the new ones are just completely different. I really like the old Friday the 13th. The Nightmare on Elm Streets are good, but you don't want to let too younger kid watch that because they'll be having nightmares.
It certainly needs to be censored, if nothing else.
Oh yeah, and you know the big trope in Friday the 13th, and it's kind of funny. Like they have all this sex and drugs and language and everything of all these college kids out at Camp Crystal Lake, and they're doing all these things that are not right or they're these big sins.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big trope that anybody in the movie that commits one of these sins gets killed by Freddy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or Jason
yeah.
in Friday the 13th. Yeah. So Jason seems to only be able to kill those that would smoke weed or drink or have sex before marriage. Anything that is sinful, Jason's going to get you. So
right.
that's a funny trope in those movies.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what is it? Scream. They kind of talk about that a lot in there, don't they?
Well, and that's another pretty good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that fact. They've got the horror aficionado in there that knows all the tropes, and he knows what's going to happen, and he's trying to explain to them, like, you guys don't need to be doing this because this is how you're going to get killed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff.
So that's another pretty good series of movies.
It is.
I like the idea of trying to figure out who the killer is. And getting the different clues, and you think of this person, and it ends up being this person. And as long as it's fun to try and figure out who the killer is,
right.
I could watch more of those. But
have you ever really gotten into? And this could be just chasing another rabbit. I've never really gotten into the Saw films. Or anything like that.
No, I've seen a few of them, and they're a whole other. The Saw films, the Hostel films.
Right.
We have just grotesque stuff like Human Centipede, stuff like that. Some of these newer horror films are just way over the top.
Yeah, that's
and the Saw films especially. It's just, I mean I guess you have a little bit of the suspense there, but mostly it's just gross. It's just how outlandish can we be with how to kill this person or that person?
Right.
It's not the same as some of these classic horror films that we think of.
Yeah, and it was maybe 5 to 10 years ago when those things were just extremely popular, and they were all trying to out-gore each other. And to me, that kind of, while they may have had a certain amount of suspense, and I know that maybe even a lot of the 2 out of the 3 people that listen to us, they might enjoy that kind of thing. And it's fine if you do. It's just, for me, that's just not. I never really got into that. There's scary things. There's the imagination, the things that stretch your imagination, like the science fiction and the fantasy, and even, you're talking about the trolls and critters and invaders from Mars, and even when you talk about, Freddy and Jason, and you even go with your science fiction, you could talk about aliens and Predator and all of those kind of things.
And there's the especially the first Alien.
Oh yeah.
It could be considered in that genre.
Oh
and
yeah.
Honestly, one of the games that I played on Friday the 13th was Alien Isolation, and it's that same idea of basically you have a monster, which is the alien.
Right.
And now there's some other films that they're not the same as the classic horror films, but I like 13 Ghosts is one of them.
What was the one?
There's one that's House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
And it's a remake. I enjoyed that one. Any of the haunted house ones. Amityville was a pretty good classic.
Oh gosh, there's one that there's a couple that just came to mind. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is it takes
I've
on
seen that one. It's
a
pretty
lot
good.
of those tropes, and it is hysterical. Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods. That is, and I can't believe I didn't think of this and put it on the list. I guess because it's not really family friendly.
Right, it's not, but it's
Cabin in the Woods is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen.
Right, and
Joss Whedon knocks it out of the park.
Oh yeah, and I think Tucker and Dale versus Evil too. I watched it a couple times because it does take on a lot of the tropes that you see in these films, and it just kind of turns them on their head. And I can't remember. I just thought about it, and it's probably knowing who's in it and some of the themes. It's probably not quote unquote family friendly either, but.
Well, and that's, like I said, I guess that's the only reason I didn't think of Cabin in the Woods, because that's probably my favorite horror movie, just because it has a really good twist,
right? And
the entire plot is just good from start to finish.
Yeah, and there's another one that I was just trying to remember, and it was in the 80s, not 80s, it was in the late 90s. It was really good. Oh gosh, what was it called?
You're really narrowing it down.
It was Josh Hartnett, and it was
Final Destination.
No, those are some
Teacher's Pet. Josh Hartnett.
Those are some trippy movies too, but it was. Oh man! Now that I'm trying to think about it, and I look like a fool, and I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna look it up while we're sitting here. The Faculty.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of.
The Faculty, and
yeah,
okay,
that one's a pretty good.
That was a fantastic movie, especially at the time it was great, and the cast. It was here. I feel like a nincompoop now because it's got Elijah Wood, Jordana Brewster. Who else was in it? Usher was in it. Femke Janssen was in it. I don't remember Selma Hayek in it. She was a teacher. Yeah, so was Jon Stewart. It was an incredible cast. Robert Patrick was in it. So it was pretty low budget, but it was really good.
Yeah, it
was a lot of fun too. And
we're gonna have to when it gets closer to Halloween, or we get up on another Friday the 13th. We're gonna have to do an entire episode just about vampires, because there's another movie that Josh Hartnett was in later. It was 30 Days of Night.
Oh.
It's a pretty good vampire movie.
Oh, yeah.
But there's, the vampire genre is a topic unto itself. So
yeah, and we could probably spend a good hour of that podcast just talking about Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, all of the Underworld movies. We should really just watch all of those again. Maybe we could do some commentaries on the Underworld movies.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, I'm good with that.
But yeah, we could we get off into vampires and Kate Beckinsale and underworld movies. We could be here a while.
Yeah, yeah.
But now, like we said, there's other family-friendly scary movies that you could find on any of the streaming services, or in any of the video stores, or if you are a digital distribution person, you could download them. But we could be here a while if we keep going through all the scary movies that we love. And there's going to be more Friday the 13th. And Halloween comes around every year, so we'll have more chances to do some of that.